The fear, damage and fresh warnings. Two men accused of a reckless act on a high-risk day leading to an out-of-control grass fire in the north.
It's starting to look a lot like an election. The PM's pitch to young voters here in Adelaide, vowing to slash uni and TAFE debts.
Inside the state's Royal Commission into Domestic Violence, hear from the young voices shaping SA's plan to tackle the crisis.
Doubling down on the race to the finish line, Kamala and Donald deploy different tactics with only days to go.
Plus, a Star Wars icon here in Adelaide as colourful characters celebrate all things sci-fi and superheroes.
This is Adelaide's 9 News with Will McDonald and Alice Monfries.
Good evening. Two men are behind bars charged with starting Saturday afternoon's out-of-control grass fire in Penfield.
Police say their angle grinder sparked it when conditions were dangerous. And tonight, a family caught up in the fire's line tells of how they feared they'd lose it all.
A family loaded into an ambulance as water bombers circle above. Colin Jones, taken away with smoke inhalation, thought he'd never see his home of 20 years again when fire ripped through his Womma Road property yesterday afternoon.
There goes our life. Property gone, house, vehicles, work for years and years and years, just all up in flames.
Paddocks charred and priceless military memorabilia destroyed, despite Colin's best efforts to protect it.
I couldn't see any more than about 3 feet in front of me. I couldn't breathe. Threw the hose down and had to just evacuate myself as quickly as possible.
But thanks to the efforts of firefighters, his home and sheds were salvaged. The blaze started in his neighbour's paddock, thought sparked by an angle grinder, and driven by 35-degree heat and dry northerly winds.
I'm sure none of this meant to be disastrous like it is, but a small decision has an impact on so many.
Less than a kilometre from Colin's home is this residential village. 200 elderly residents on high alert, their homes also under threat. Crime scene investigators and CFS returned to the ignition point today after two 31-year-old men were arrested and charged with being recklessly indifferent to causing a bushfire.
People need to know that starting a fire, even accidentally, can sometimes lead to criminal proceedings.
They front court tomorrow. Inga Nielsen, 9 News.
The Prime Minister was in Adelaide today unveiling his student debt plan that he hopes will underpin Labor's re-election strategy.
HECS will be slashed by 20% in a bold $16 billion move to help millions of Australians repaying student loans.
It looks and sounds like an election. Applause on tap, a brand new slogan.
Building Australia's future.
Backed by billions in new spending.
Permanent structural reform to boost take-home pay for young Australians.
A direct pitch at younger voters who start their working lives on low wages, paying high rent and saddled with large HECS debts. 3 million Australians owe $76 billion in student loans, and while the average debt is $27,500, there are 670,000 who owe more than $40,000 and more than 250,000 who owe $60,000 or more. They'll be $12,000 better off.
We will raise the repayment threshold from $54,000 up to $67,000.
It means for somebody that might be on, say, $80,000 a year, that they're paying about $850 less a year than they have to at the moment.
Slashing HECS debts by 20% will cost a massive $16 billion. But universities are big business. An art student, for example, will be charged $17,000 a year from 2025.
And so to get student debt under control, we have to look at the prices students are paying as well as the repayment system.
Which would cost billions more, and you can't rule that out. The PM today indicating there'll be more promises from Labor on this front. The catch, they won't be legislated unless the government wins next year's election.
If Anthony Albanese intends to turn the next election campaign into some great big cash splash, well, where is the money coming from for Labor?
Labor's plan falls short of what is needed. All student debt should be wiped and uni and TAFE should be free.
Young graduates emerging as the new political battlefront. Andrew Probyn, 9 News.
New calls tonight for a ban on the sale of machetes following a wave of recent knife crime across Adelaide. It's scenes like these, brawls in the city and terrifying home invasions, that's driven the opposition push.
It seems that the machete has become the weapon of choice for violent criminal gangs, and we need stronger laws.
Already, machetes carrying down in a public place attracts a criminal offence.
The government says a series of measures to combat knife crime are already in the works.
The voices of South Australian children are front and centre as the state works to stamp out domestic violence. 9 News was given exclusive access inside a student summit where their unique perspectives will help shape the state's Royal Commission into domestic, family and sexual violence.
They're the teens of today taking charge of their future to change the conversation and the culture of violence against women.
It's just quite a difficult thing to go on public transport as a female, and so I find that really important that we do change that, because I should, as a woman, be able to catch public transport when I need to.
Amid a sea of 130 students from across the state, the first summit that will hear the voices and stories of children that will help inform the state's Royal Commission into domestic, family and sexual violence.
I just hear that word again, education. So that's an absolute focus area.
Young people's experiences are absolutely essential to this Royal Commission, and it's very rare that children and young people are included, not just in decisions that we make, but in the consultations that we have.
The feeling of dismissal one 21-year-old Connor Paul knows well after growing up in a home plagued with domestic violence.
Home wasn't a safe place for me growing up, and like many children and young people in South Australia and across Australia, my voice wasn't considered when I reached out for support.
Victoria's historic Royal Commission 10 years ago saw 227 recommendations handed down, but only a handful focused on child victim survivors, who are often referred to as the silent victims in family violence.
I made it an absolute priority to centre the wishes, the ideas and the experiences of young people.
Us young people having our voices heard adds that extra layer of information, an extra layer of opinion that goes into something like the Royal Commission into the domestic and family violence.
The Commission, which began in July, has 1 year to provide feedback to the state government on how to curb this crisis in the hopes of saving lives.
It does haunt me. It really does. And that's why I'm doing this Royal Commission, because I passionately believe we can prevent this violence from occurring in the first place.
Alongside summits, the Commission also runs a Share With Us website still open for another month, allowing South Australians to provide feedback and insights into the state's family violence systems to help create meaningful change. Kelly Hughes, 9 News.
There are just 3 days to go until the US presidential election. Today, the focus turned to the hurricane-ravaged state of North Carolina.
Donald Trump spread false information about the emergency response, while Kamala Harris left Americans seeing double.
I wish I could talk to someone who's been in my shoes, a black South Asian woman running for president.
The Vice President face to face with her funniest self.
You and me both, sister.
A primetime pep talk poking fun for any possible political advantage.
What do we always say? Keep Kamala and carry on a lot.
Trying to show America she can take a joke.
And live from New York
While back in the battlegrounds, the former president's supporters arrived ready to talk trash.
I identify as garbage for Trump, MAGA garbage.
Galvanised after this gaffe from Joe Biden.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
Both candidates converging on North Carolina today, but the incumbent was limited to his hometown of Scranton, Pennsylvania, campaigning with his granddaughter by his side.
This is Natalie.
The Tar Heel state is considered to be a purple one. In 2020, Donald Trump won North Carolina by the smallest of margins, just 1.3%. Last month, the region was ravaged by Hurricane Helene, bringing record rain, more than 100 deaths and a lot of uncertainty.
A lot of the employees that we work with lost everything.
In back-to-back rallies, President 45 spread conspiracy theories about the emergency response.
You know, FEMA has totally let them down. FEMA, you know why? Because they spent all their money on illegal migrants.
Harris and Trump have been statistically tied here for months.
Who here has already voted?
Today, the Democrats deployed a Hollywood legend.
I'm Harrison Ford. I've got one vote, same as anyone else, and I'm going to use it to move forward.
And a rock and roll Hall of Famer.
This is the people's house, the house of you and of me. Let's get the job done.
Building this house, this is the people.
More than 70 million Americans have already voted in this election. And with 3 days to go, it's now or never for the Vice President's campaign. In Charlotte, North Carolina, Alison Petrowski, 9 News.
US President Joe Biden is actively campaigning for Kamala Harris, but it might not be helpful. Nine's political editor Charles Croucher explains from Washington, D.C.
18 months ago in Japan, Joe Biden told me to shut up. Well, shush up. He'd met with Anthony Albanese and was being questioned by American press about a looming shutdown. I wanted to ask about China. During one of his long pauses, I thought he'd finished and jumped in. He hadn't, and I got what I probably deserved. Now, though, they're words by which the president should live. The final 48 hours of any campaign are crucial, but particularly this one, and for Kamala Harris, who's trying to pitch herself as a new direction. The vice president has plenty of surrogates, from the Obamas to Oprah, Springsteen to Swift, Beyonce, but not Biden. History will be kind to Joe Biden, his achievements in office and a lifetime of service. But for the next 48 hours, it's time to shush up.
And Charles Croucher there. Still a lot to play out in the US election. Well, Virgin Australia claims a preference by politicians to fly Qantas is costing taxpayers tens of millions of dollars extra every year. More than 90% of Pollies and their staff choose the Flying Kangaroo. Now Virgin is accusing them of flying in the face of parliamentary rules.
Ahead of sitting week, federal parliamentarians make their way to Canberra, days of debate about Pollies and their airfare perks still fresh. Virgin Australia raising concerns about how fair the air is.
What no Australian wants is where we only have an environment where there's one carrier. I think that domestic tension is, that competitive tension in the market is always powerful.
But when it comes to parliamentary bookings, Virgin isn't convinced that's being observed.
Virgin Australia has called into question the whole system of politicians and their staffers booking flights. In a submission in January, it claimed that Qantas gets 90% of the bookings, despite a rule that the lower fare should be booked where appropriate.
When public servants' fares are included, Virgin says it gets just 23% of the estimated $250 million spent on government flights each year, despite its fares being up to 30% cheaper. It follows the fallout of the Prime Minister battling questions about 22 flight upgrades with Qantas over the years. All were declared, and he denies ever calling then CEO Alan Joyce. But Education Minister Jason Clare has admitted he did call Qantas for a personal flight upgrade from Sydney to Singapore in 2019 to meet his family.
That was a situation where I had just got out of hospital. I had surgery on my leg, and yep, I asked for an upgrade. I was assisted by Qantas.
He couldn't remember who he called, saying it was probably a Qantas government relations person. His family didn't get the upgrade, and this was all declared.
If you get an upgrade or you're given anything else, you declare it. You fill out a form, you whack it on the internet, and it's there for everybody to see.
A Finance Department review of federal travel rules is expected by year's end. Eddie Meyer, 9 News.
King Charles and Queen Camilla say they're heartbroken over the flood disaster in Spain. As the death toll rises, anger is growing too. Residents in the worst-hit towns saying they feel abandoned.
4 days since floods devastated these Spanish towns, and anguish is turning to anger.
We feel that we are abandoned by the government, and we are helping each other.
Volunteers from around the world showing up in solidarity, armed with brooms and shovels.
I was in the US, in Miami, with my friends, and so I heard this, news, very sad. And so I flew in here, trying my best to help everybody.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez admitting the government's response hasn't been enough, announcing it's requested help from the European Solidarity Fund and that 5,000 more soldiers and 5,000 police officers are on their way, the biggest peacetime deployment in the nation's history. I know that we have to do better, the Spanish PM says. There will be time to analyse negligence, to reflect on how to improve. Authorities say almost 5,000 people have been rescued, but some are still missing. These parents are trying to find their daughter. In a message to Spain's King Felipe, King Charles wrote, "My wife and I were utterly heartbroken to learn of the destruction and devastation. We extend our most sincere and heartfelt condolences to you and to the people of Spain for the tragic loss of so many lives." In London, Hannah Sinclair, 9 News.
From Star Wars icons to actors in cult classics, they were all here in Adelaide this weekend and plenty of fans turned out to celebrate. Thousands of people dressed up as their favourite characters, with some even lucky enough to meet the guest list of world-famous stars.
From the wacky to the well-known and the wonderful, there's a place for everyone at Supernova.
Are you enjoying your time at Supernova?
Adoring fans lined up to meet their heroes who starred in cult classics like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Lord of the Rings and even Star Wars.
It is great that after nearly 5 decades there are 3 generations of fans.
Some younger fans unable to recognise the man inside the robot.
Hello, I am C-3PO Human Cyborg Relations. And then you see the kid, oh, I get it.
Today, a celebration of the imaginary worlds that come from comics, films, gaming and literature. A community formed by suspending reality together.
We all cosplay as a passion. We love it. It's a hobby of ours.
Mythbusters legend Adam Savage inspiring his fans to stay creative.
You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. I want everyone to scratch that itch, because when we scratch that itch of our point of view and what we're interested in, we find ourselves.
Although there are thousands of different characters here, there is one thing the more dedicated fans all have in common: the passion and effort that's gone into their costumes. Because do or do not, there is no try.
I was working outside of work just many hours at night, so probably about a month's work. Definitely have to have that passion there to keep you motivated to keep working on it.
It is the first screen accurate one I've done, and it took me about 4 months to make.
It's been a great day.
April Cretan, 9 News.
Passion is the word. There's a lot that's gone into those costumes.
Absolutely. Scary to think Star Wars almost 50 years ago.
And you're a big fan, weren't
and
you?
I'm almost 50, which is quite sad too.
All right, well, Corey Norris is here with a look ahead to sport. And, Corey, this is exciting as South Australians on the verge of a test debut.
Yeah, Alice, Nathan McSweeney has absolutely smashed the selectors' door down with a stunning run of form. Surely he's done enough, but has he won over the skipper? We'll ask Pat Cummins. Also tonight, Jamie Carr's determination to fight through the pain of a broken nose in her shot at Cup history. But down in Murray Bridge, another South Aussie has been mapping her own plans for Flemington. That's all coming up in sport.
Thanks, Corey. See you soon. 3D printing has revolutionised the way we manufacture things.
But now it's been taken to a life-saving new level, replicating human organs and tissue in seconds. That incredible breakthrough here in Australia is coming up next.
Keep your kids home. Fears of an all-out gang war in Melbourne after a young rapper is shot dead.
And fists fly at Woolies. Shoppers stunned as a brawl breaks out. There are fears of a retaliation attack in Melbourne after budding rapper Paul Bidon was shot dead outside a Halloween party. The young man, known as Peasy, was gunned down yesterday morning. A South Sudanese community leader has told families to keep their kids at home. Police are yet to make any arrests in relation to the shooting. This
is the moment a brawl broke out at the Woolworths supermarket in Tweed Heads in New South Wales. A 20-year-old man pinned to the ground by 3 men as the punches are thrown. The group is still on the run, with the victim suffering minor injuries. Melbourne researchers have made a breakthrough discovery, allowing them to create human-like body tissue in just seconds. The process is hundreds of times faster than current 3D printers and could be a boost to cancer care.
What you're watching is a bubble and a beam of light turn liquid into a solid that could one day replace your organs.
We have built the world's fastest 3D bioprinter, and what that allows us to do is really enable a lot of different types of research that really haven't been possible to date.
The one-of-a-kind machine sits at one end of David Collins' lab at the University of Melbourne, not far from a standard 3D printer.
If we wanted to print something, say, the size of a thimble on here, it might take up to an hour, something like that. If we were to print that on our machine, it would take literally seconds to actually print that same material.
This week, he and lead researcher Callum Vidler published a paper introducing their creation to the world.
When we submerge this print head into the liquid and we form this bubble, we can create objects from the surface of the bubble in just a matter of seconds.
Materials as soft as this, which more closely resemble bone cartilage, can be held in the human hand, but anything softer has to be printed and kept in this resin. By doing so, they can print materials up to 100 times softer than this, that more closely resemble the human brain.
The human body is full of tissues that do not work at a fundamental level unless you can position or tell your cells exactly where they need to be within that tissue. We're able to print resolutions down to the scale of single cells.
The team has printed a small kidney so far, and by the end of next year, they're aiming to have their tech in the hands of researchers across the world, believing speed will be the key to testing and creating personalised cancer treatments.
I think it's going to be a lot safer, ultimately, because you're not having to trial and error a solution on the patient themselves. As we move towards a more ethical society, we want to remove or eliminate the need for animal testing for a lot of our drugs and a lot of our cosmetics.
Mark Santomartino, 9 News.
It's incredible. Well, no trace of yesterday's hot weather, with cool winds now pushing across Adelaide.
Chelsea Carey, what a difference a day makes.
Yes, we are on this spring roller coaster at the moment. A cool change rolled through Adelaide in the early hours of this morning. So today was around 11 degrees cooler than yesterday. We made a top of 22.1 here in the city. Right now it's sitting just under 20 degrees. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a whole lot in the way of rainfall with this change, just the odd spot around. Our next best shot at showers is going to be on Tuesday. Now, Tuesday is going to be quite an interesting day because that's when temperatures also jump back up to around 30 degrees. So the roller coaster rolls on. I'll have everything you need to know a little later.
It certainly does, Chels. Thank you. Just 3 days to go.
Yeah, the countdown to the US election is well and truly on. Next, we take a look at a big issue that could determine the result, and most Aussies will be able to relate.
Also ahead, the Taylor Swift slur that sent Travis Kelce's brother into a fury, smashing a stranger's phone.
A new role for Margot Robbie. The Aussie superstar becomes a mum.
A crushing response. That's the threat from Iran's supreme leader to Israel and the US in response to attacks on Iran and its allies. The threat follows at least 11 people being injured in central Israel after projectiles were fired from Lebanon. The pre-dawn attack hitting a house, further dampening hopes of a ceasefire. Hundreds have gathered in Serbia, lighting candles to remember the 14 people killed when a concrete canopy collapsed at the entrance of a railway station in the country's north. Some held up victims' names, the youngest a 6-year-old girl. Rescuers have called off the search for survivors from Friday's tragedy. Kemi Badenoch is tonight the first black woman to lead a major British political party after she was elected as the new Tories leader. The 44-year-old beat rival Robert Jenrick with 57% of the vote. Ms Badenoch, who replaces former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, is pledging to lead the party through a period of renewal.
In a matter of days, America will decide its future, and on the streets of many towns and cities, cost of living could be a decisive factor. Like many Western nations, the US has battled higher inflation, and Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have their own ideas on how to ease the burden.
It's game day for college football in Michigan.
But some are focused on a different scoreboard.
I am concerned that Trump could potentially win and be in office again.
East Lansing is a college town. Nadia Sellers owns this shoe store, but business is tough. Sales are down 40% in a year. Her personal finances have been hit by years of higher inflation.
A normal 6-bag of groceries under $100 is now almost $200.
That's crazy.
Well, because they can get away with it.
Most places you go in these battleground states, it is the economy that is at the front of people's minds consistently. It is the number one issue for American voters in this election, even at a time when things are turning around. Kamala Harris's economic focus is tackling price gouging and giving families tax breaks.
The American people face a choice between two fundamentally very different paths for our economy.
Donald Trump wants to cut taxes too and put major tariffs on imports. And in a state home to the Model T Ford, he's vowing to turn the clock back for industry.
Make the United States into a manufacturing powerhouse like it used to be many years ago.
In East Lansing, Michigan, Jonathan Kersley, 9 News.
An ugly encounter between former NFL star Jason Kelce and a fan in the US. An enraged Kelce ripping a phone straight out of the man's hands and smashing it. Kelce was furious after a homophobic slur was directed at his brother Travis, who was dating pop star Taylor Swift. Barbie star Margot Robbie has given birth to a baby boy, according to reports from the UK. It's believed she went into labour a fortnight ago, shortly before her due date, welcoming her first child with husband Tom Ackley on October 17.
Well, stars of Wicked, including Ariana Grande, are taking to the Yellow Brick Road in Sydney tonight for the world premiere of the highly anticipated film. Some fans, though, they braved the night on the concrete, waiting for more than 30 hours to get a front row seat.
In the heart of Sydney's CBD, Market Street transformed as Munchkinland moves in. The Yellow Brick Road setting the stage as the frenzy around the Broadway musical turned blockbuster builds. Dynamic duo Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo.
We've cried 5 times already. Today, like walking from there to here. It's been very emotional. It's also my first time here.
Alongside Marissa Bodie, Jonathan Bailey and Jeff Goldblum.
The Aussians have turned out in force. Because this is the sort of movie that when I was sort of 5 or 6 would have inspired me.
The part I was,
Earlier today, Ariana's mum, Joan Grande, taking time to greet fans, one gifting her a hand-painted jacket of the star alongside our national icon.
And she's like, oh, well, not many people paint my daughter well, but you've nailed it.
Pitt Street Mall, a pit stop for fans, waiting since 8 a.m. yesterday, just a handful of wristbands guaranteeing a glimpse of the stars. Those who missed out, surely green with envy.
No rest for the wicked. We're ready to celebrate the Glinda way.
From dress-ups to life-size Lego, the popular witches were everywhere you looked.
I wanted to be opposite with my mum and she chose Glinda.
Sydney is the first stop on a 5-city global tour. The cast also travelling to the likes of LA and London. Wicked, one of the most anticipated movies of 2024. Madison Scott, 9 News.
Oh, huge hype, incredible.
Massive. I'm always worried when they try to put a new spin on such a classic movie.
Yeah, let's give it a chance.
All right.
I think it'll be all right.
All right, fair enough.
All right, the future is here.
Science fiction becomes a reality with the world's first flying car arriving in Australia. That's next.
Tennis legend Leighton Hewitt's Gold Coast mansion goes under the hammer. Just how much did it fetch?
And the Melbourne man building a multi-million-dollar empire, one brick at a time.
A close-up look tonight at what's being promised for the future of the automobile. Making its local debut at the International EV Auto Show is the car with no wheels but 8 propellers.
It's been a dream since the times the first Model T rolled off the production line. The flying car. and it looks like it may have just touched down.
This has a range of 75 kilometres, flying at between 300 and 500 metres.
Like an oversized drone, the Xpeng X2's 8 blades are electrically powered.
And it gives you about half an hour at 130 kilometres an hour.
The X2 already flying in the Middle East and at its home in China. However, given the tight leash on range and power, its Australian debut is being marketed for airport connector hops, emergency medical deployment and rural work.
But as battery technology improves, as this gets more refined, you'll see that distance starting to open up.
The X2 offering guidance by GPS or joystick.
Are you autonomous or manual?
No, mate, I'm manual, mate. I'm throwing on the tree.
And if you crunch the box mid-flight, Providence comes by parachute. But there are considerable equations to be cracked before we start tailgating the Jetsons.
The danger there and the safety issues with that's just, right now, too much.
So the Blade Runner / Star Wars scenario where it's like a highway in the sky, we're a long ways away from that at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's the first iteration and the development's now become very fast.
At Mascot, Mike Dalton, 9 News.
Well, one of Australia's most Insta-famous homes is still up for grabs. The Gold Coast property owned by Leighton and Beck Hewitt left on the market after there were no registered bidders for today's scheduled auction. But the agents are confident the home will be sold very soon. The couple bought the home in 2021 for $4.3 million. An Australian man has turned his passion for Lego into a multi-million-dollar global business brick by brick. He specialises in LED lighting kits that really help bring the plastic creations to life.
It was father of 3 Kenny Lee's obsession with Lego that led to a light bulb moment.
I was arguing with the wife because of the money I was spending on Lego, and I figured to myself, how can I make this into a business so that my expenditure on Lego is guilt-free?
Kenny decided Lego could do with illumination. This, his very first.
But as soon as I put the flashing lights in that little barber sign, that was when the spark moment was there, and that was when I was like, I'm onto something.
To flick the switch, in 2016, his initial investment was $10,000 and Light My Bricks was born. From the movie-themed, like the Ghostbusters Ectomobile and Star Wars, to the Titanic and entire cities, Light My Bricks is now sold around the world in the US, Canada, Europe, Asia and Australia. Kenny employing a staff of 30 Lego aficionados. With prices ranging from $30 to $300, turnover last year was a staggering $12 million. Not surprisingly, their customers are grown-ups.
They're the ones who have the disposable income. We're the ones who will build and display rather than like kids who are building and destroying.
Another light bulb moment for Kenny when he realised he could bring to life other passion projects. So he's branching out from Lego to include other toys, from robots to model cars.
So many other hobbies out there, and you can light up essentially anything. So we're so excited to take that on.
And how are the arguments with his wife going? Who won?
I ultimately did, and if you ask her now how she feels, she'd probably say it was the only time she was wrong.
Jo Hall, 9 News.
It's Lego.
Definitely
Lego. All right. It's time for sport with Corey Norris, and Jamie Carr's going to tough it out on Tuesday. Corey.
Yeah, Alice, she copped a broken nose yesterday, but nothing will stop her from chasing her spring dream. We catch up with her next. Also, why Chris Waller wasn't bucking tradition in his bid for another cup. Also, amazing scenes at Alberton as the Power comes from behind to secure a home final. And the Sixers with some work to do after their horror trip across the ditch. Hello again, South Australian Mayor The Map will have to overcome odds to make history at the Melbourne Cup, having drawn barrier 23 for Tuesday's great race. Starting the long trek from Murray Bridge to Flemington earlier today, her trainers are daring to dream of a historic win, especially after the success of fellow South Aussie Gold Rush guru, the 3-year-old colt, storming home to win yesterday's $2 million derby.
Yeah, wasn't that awesome to watch?
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, it was a huge thrill to watch that. Huge thrill to see Andrew get his first Group 1 and, yeah.
On the big stage, Flemington.
So it does give you, just more, you can do it. It can be done.
Yeah, the Maps odds are out to $51 following the draw, with Vauban now the bookies' favourite. Well, it's going to take more than a broken nose to stop Jamie Carr from riding in the Cup. The South Australian superstar is looking to join Michelle Payne as the only other female winner of the great race, fresh off an emotional Derby day.
Jamie Carr should be on top of the world. Instead, the Victoria Derby winning jockey is in a world of pain.
I feel like I've been hit by a train, but I'll be fine. I feel like I'm talking underwater today. I feel like I'm very blocked up, but it's fine. We won a derby, so it's all good.
Carr suffered a suspected broken nose when her ride Hurry Curry reared up near the barrier. Later, she went on to win the $2 million derby on Gold Rush Guru. And the injury won't stop her riding in Tuesday's Melbourne Cup.
When you're out there, the adrenaline takes over, it's fine. It's just going to sleep's not very easy.
It was a bump on what was a roller coaster day for the 28-year-old. Emotions spilled over when she claimed the Damien Oliver on another will, days after the passing of part owner Colin McKenna.
I thought I was tough, and then I got into the mounting yard and I saw Kieran bawling his eyes out, and I was done after that.
In another twist, Carr was hit with a 10-meeting ban for reckless riding, but will serve the suspension after the Melbourne Cup. Her ride, Akita Sushi, has drawn barrier 10 for the race.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. At least I can ride Cup Day.
The coveted Melbourne Cup received its annual blessing this morning. Champion trainer Chris Waller might be relying on some divine intervention after his Cup hopeful Buckaroo drew barrier 21. Vauban is the new favourite. The gelding did track work at Werribee this morning ahead of the race that stops the nation. Nat Yanides, 9 News.
Some remarkable scenes at Alberton tonight, with Port Adelaide coming from behind to secure their first ever home final, thanks to a thrilling 1-point win over GWS. Despite trailing all game, the Power mounted an incredible comeback in the final term, with star forward Gemma Houghton standing tallest when it mattered most.
In she comes, she's taken a big mark. Can she kick a big goal? Oh, you bet she can! Gemma Houghton, the hero! Salutes to the massive crowd at Alberton Oval. Yana Poultier in front.
Yeah, amazing stuff. They'll host Richmond next week and head into their maiden finals campaign as the competition's form team with 6 straight wins. Well, South Australia's Nathan McSweeney is charging towards a Test debut, top scoring in Australia A's win over India A. McSweeney has the backing of a former Australian captain and appears to be winning over current skipper Pat Cummins in the race to open in the first Test.
Some labelled this match a bat-off for a baggy green. If it was, there was one clear winner.
Drop short and dispatched by McSweeney.
Nathan McSweeney leading Australia A to victory with 88 not out.
Back and dispatched over the top.
Comprehensively outplaying the other Test opening contenders.
I think it's like a final bit of information. There's a lot of pressure on these last 2 games, which, whether you like it or not, it's probably what you're going to get in Test cricket anyway.
There's another Australia A game later this week, so Pat Cummins was staying neutral.
Whoever's picked, they're going to come off the back of plenty of runs at the start of the year.
But a former Australian captain has already seen enough.
I would probably go for McSweeney at the moment. He's the guy making some runs at the moment. I'd be definitely going for youth. Give them an opportunity. Start reinvigorating this side, which it's going to need not just this year, but in the next 3 or 4 years to come.
25-year-old McSweeney usually bats at 3 for South Australia, but says he'd be comfortable opening.
Where you bat isn't that important. You try and work out how the batting order as a whole is going to function best.
Before the Tests against India, Australia has 1-dayers against Pakistan starting tomorrow at the MCG.
Generally, you'd like to give guys certainty. You'd like to give...
You're a day early. Young gun Jake Fraser-McGurk has been recalled for what will be Pat Cummins' first ODI since last year.
High intensity cricket, but you cap to 10 overs is a great way to kind of kick into the summer.
Luke Doversey, 9 News.
Well, the Strikers have suffered yet another agonising loss in the WBBL, this time going down to the Renegades in a contest that came down to the final ball.
Nick Fulton, what can you do? She gets it through the field for 1. They'll come back for the 2nd. She's going to get there. The Renegades have won it.
Yeah, it's been a tough going for the reigning champs, sitting last with just the 1 win so far. Well, Adelaide United has claimed a confidence-boosting win on the road, finding the back of the net 4 times against the Wanderers in Sydney. The Reds did much of the damage in the opening half, piercing Western Sydney's defence on several occasions.
Clough straight into the wall. It sits nicely for Parias. Oh, what a goal that is! Against his former club. That's a bullet into the top corner.
I think it's going to be, a good lift for the boys. As you said, we've got some new players in the team and some younger players as well, so it's always good to get a good win away from home, especially a difficult place like it is here.
Yeah, 4-3 was the final scoreline, with the Reds to host Western United on Saturday night. The 36ers have some serious work to do this week after copping a major reality check from the Breakers in New Zealand. Outplayed from the opening tip, coach Mike Wells admits the club needs to bring the same energy they have at home when playing on the road.
Victory usually goes to the more aggressive team. Unfortunately, we had another slow start. You're just trying to get a few stops in a row where you can, get back at them and run at them and make a few shots and, make the extra pass. And unfortunately, we didn't have enough of those runs.
Yeah, Nick Marshall's massive dunk in the final seconds was one of just a few highlights. They now have an 8-day break before hosting Illawarra on Sunday. And the Lightning didn't fare much better in their season opener, going down to Bendigo by 14 points. Despite leading in the final term, they had few answers as the Spirits stormed home.
Wilson turns the corner. Samuels open for 3. Dagger from Casey Samuels.
New import Pristine, Adelaide's best with a game-high 23 points. So some work to do for both of our teams, but I think they can turn it all around.
Yeah, early in the season, Corey. Thank you.
Exactly. Thanks, Corey. Well, we've got warm weather for the start of the week, but we could still see some showers. Chelsea Carey has all those details next.
But first, time to check out where the speed cameras will be tomorrow.
Wake up and laugh with Adelaide's #1 breakfast show.
Ruditz and Loz tomorrow on 104.7 Triple M.
For the latest Adelaide news and traffic.
Hello again. Well, it is a peaceful Sunday night here in the city. Lovely by the River Torrens, but considerably fresher than it was yesterday. In fact, today was around 11 degrees cooler. We had a top of 22.1 here in the city. Right now, it's sitting on 18.7. So a cool change rolled through Adelaide in the early hours of this morning. Unfortunately, we didn't see a whole lot of rain with this system, just the odd spot around, less than 0.2 of a millimetre. Today, it's really been the cool winds that we noticed. It was 20 degrees by the Bay, 21 at Noarlunga, and a little fresher up on Mount Lofty. Temperatures lifted into the mid-20s around Clare, Port Pirie and Port Augusta. Still some heat further inland though. Roxby Downs topped 30. In the south, it was 20 on Hindmarsh Island, and we did see a few more showers down in the lower southeast, 1.2 millimetres at Mount Gambier before clearing off this morning. Now, a trough sitting over the northeast of the state will bring some instability up there tomorrow, while a ridge of high pressure keeps conditions more stable in the south before a trough moves in from WA on Tuesday. Interstate, Melbourne, partly cloudy with a top of 20 tomorrow. A couple of showers around Sydney, 25. Back home, we have those unsettled conditions in the far north tomorrow. Maybe a shower or a thunderstorm up around Coober Pedy, but elsewhere, mostly looking like a dry day. Port Augusta, a sunny 29. A sunny 28 for Renmark. A little bit of cloud around the south, more likely down around Mount Gambier, 19 the top there. On local waters, winds shifting southeasterly in the evening around 10 knots, seas below 1 metre. So across Adelaide, you might notice some cloud around in the morning, but clearing off during the day. Should see plenty of sun. A top of 24 for Elizabeth, 23 for Mount Barker, 22 for Glenelg and Noarlunga. Here in the city, down to 12 tonight. Tomorrow, cloud clearing. Should be really quite a pleasant day for a Monday, 23 degrees the top. Then on Tuesday, it jumps up to 31. Now, it will be quite an interesting day. There is a chance of a couple of showers in the afternoon, maybe even a rumble of thunder, but of course a warm day. 27 on Wednesday and then some cooler conditions later in the week. At this stage, next weekend really does look lovely. Alison Will, 23 on Saturday, 24 on Sunday.
Perfect. Chelsea, thank you. And thanks for your company this weekend on Adelaide's 9 News.
We'll be back with updates a little later, but for now, enjoy your evening here on 9.
Good night.